Hello, All-Star Sports Show with Merrick Takash.
And Ethan Smythe.
Back for another week on this fine, beautiful 30-degree day here in Edmonton, Alberta. July the 3rd, 2013. We're glad to be back with you. Lots of stuff to talk about today, and we're going to boot off the show with our favorite part of the show, question time. The first question here is for Ethan. Who's the best pitcher in the MLB so far this year? And this one comes in from Andy.
Well, in my honest opinion, it's going to be Matt Harvey of the New York Mets. Yeah, this team is horrible, but Matt Harvey and David Wright are the two bright spots. Harvey second in ERA, second in strikeouts, and really when you look at him, he'll probably be the NL All-Star starter. There's no arguing he's been the best in the NL and probably MLB. Okay, Merrick, this one comes from Mike in Vancouver. What are your thoughts on the Corey Schneider trade to the New Jersey Devils?
You know what? Lou Lamoriello really got his money's worth in this trade, and I'll tell you why. It's not just for what he got straight up, but if you think about it, Corey Schneider is going to be going to New Jersey. He had trouble. The big scenario in Vancouver was troubling Corey Schneider, and you could tell it was. It was troubling both goalies. Now we got a for sure starter in Vancouver. Corey Schneider is going to be with one of the best mentors in the whole game for 1 year, and then he's going to go alone. He'll be the rider of the ship there in New Jersey, and I think this is a great deal for the New Jersey Devils. Mike Gillis pulling a lot of strings of Vancouver to try and get rid of Luongo, and I think this is a message around the whole NHL that nobody really wants Roberto Luongo. Something had to be done at the goalie position. This one comes in from Tom in New York, and he asks, what are your early predictions for the Super Bowl this year?
Well, I'll start off with this one, and from the NFC, I think the Atlanta Falcons, obviously Steven Jackson and Osi Umenyiora are two big pieces added to an already stellar team. Tony Gonzalez, not done yet. He's going to come back for one more year. Matt Ryan's getting better. This team is unbelievably stacked. I can't see how they could miss it. And from the AFC, I mean, it's a pretty big mess. If you look at it, obviously the Patriots having a scandalous offseason. You know, out of the teams there, I think it'll be a toss-up between the Broncos or the Texans. I think the Texans, with the acquisition of Ed Reed, will win me over, especially with Arian Foster and the like. I have the Texans and the Falcons in the Super Bowl.
And I agree with that prediction a lot. You got one, the Houston Texans, very good on D, and the Atlanta Falcons with an explosive offense.
That's right.
And I'm really liking that prediction. But for me, I'm gonna have to go with, from the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens. And here's why. I know they lost Ray Lewis. I know they lost Ed Reed. But they signed Joe Flacco to that major contract. And I think that's going to give him motivation to go forward with this football club. Their offensive line is still good. So is their defensive line with Lodi Nada leading the ship there. But I really believe the Baltimore Ravens can get back to that NFC, Super Bowl. AFC, no, I was right.
Yeah, it was AFC, yeah.
AFC. But besides Baltimore, I think it's going to be really close between Baltimore and the Denver Broncos because with the addition of Wes Welker, they're going to be a force there. Also with Peyton Manning. As you all know, Giants are my favorite team, but unfortunately, I cannot go with the Giants in the Super Bowl this year. They just have too many missing pieces of the puzzle.
Right.
But I'm going to go with a dark horse, you can call them, but I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints. And I know all of you listeners to the All-Star Sports Show probably think I am nuts for saying this, but I really believe here in New Orleans, Drew Brees is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And he hasn't really performed like it. I guess 2 years ago he had big numbers. But the New Orleans Saints have always really been a star in my mind. And for so many different reasons. They have a good defense. It's just a matter of putting all the pieces together. And after that suspension, all of that drama's over. They get their head coach back this year. I really think they're going to have a good time and a good road in the NFC. But they'll have to put up with tough competition, such as the 49ers and others there in the NFC. But for now, that's it for question time. Merrick Takash.
Just one more note as well. In my opinion, the Seattle Seahawks will be a real dark horse as well. That defense is incredible.
And I agree with you there. Lots of competition around the NFL. You stay tuned because coming up with all your NFL previews next week and the week after on the All-Star Sports Show. But for now, Merrick Diash
And Ethan Smythe.
signing off for Question Time. Stay with us. Back here on the All-Star Sports Show with Merrick Diash.
Ethan Smythe.
Explain to us what we're going to talk about next, Ethan.
Well, we're just going to do a quick draft recap for the NHL, just talk about some key headlines coming out of it. We already touched on the Corey Schneider trade to New Jersey, and we'll just take a look at some of the players drafted this year.
I'm going to start with the draft. Nathan MacKinnon, no surprise, I thought he'd go first, as Joe Sakic pretty much gave it away a few weeks before the draft. But I got to say, Seth Jones dropping down to number 4 really opened my eyes. The Nashville Predators got really, really lucky in getting a player like Seth Jones to join Shea Weber, but you got to wonder the future of Shea Weber in Nashville after the acquisition of Seth Jones. Alexander Barkov went higher than expected. No really other surprises. I just want to say a little thing about Edmonton. Darnell Nurse, great pick. I want to welcome him to Edmonton, Darnell. Good luck, because the fan base here is going to love you. This is the exact type of player the Edmonton Oilers need as we inch closer to putting together the pieces in the McTavish era in order to get to that cup again. And I think Darnell Nurse is just a stepping stone in the process. Ethan, your thoughts on the draft?
Well, like you said, Seth Jones, it's going to be unbelievable to see him join the defensive core with Roman Josi and Shea Weber already there. You got Ryan Ellis, many guys there. Darnell Nurse, big hulking defenseman. I think this guy, when he fills out, will be a huge presence. I was a little bit surprised that Valery Nichushkin fell to number 10 to Dallas, but it might just be that Russian factor. And I'd like to give a shout out to Curtis Lazar, Edmonton Oil King. Good luck in Ottawa, man.
And that's it for the NHL draft recap. And we're going to dart right into one of our favorite topics, CFL action, Week 1. And we're going to start with the first game of the week. First game in history at Investors Group Field in Winnipeg. The Montreal Alouettes took this one. Ethan, your thoughts on did the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they were up by 16 points in that game. Does it surprise you?
Well, it surprises me that they were leading the game, but it doesn't surprise me that they lost. We both had them last in our power rankings. This team's nowhere near what they were 2 years ago when they lost to the BC Lions in the Grey Cup. Yeah, first game in a new stadium, but it's going to be a pretty dismal year. And
I agree with you. The Montreal Alouettes, you don't worry about them not blowing out Winnipeg because they're still going to have a good season. New season. New stadium, big hype there in Winnipeg, but I don't think they can keep this up for the rest of the season.
No.
Toronto-Hamilton, this game I really specifically liked. Really close contest in Rogers Center, and I just want to say Chad Owens, absolutely amazing in this game, once again as the Argos march on to victory, but I just want to get your thoughts on this game.
That was a pretty wild game. The ending was fantastic in that game, obviously. Toronto scoring a touchdown near the end of the fourth quarter to beat the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Hamilton was up big after the first quarter, but just could not sustain it against the defending champs. Ricky Ray had an incredible night. And you're right about Chad Owens. This guy might be the best overall player in the CFL.
And on to our next game, the third game of Week 1, the BC Lions and the Calgary Stampeders. Calgary Stampeders, what a surprise this was. The floods in Calgary, just to come out and win, make a really big statement, and I really liked that. The Calgary Stampeders were able to do it. John Cornish was absolutely wild, and we'll touch on that more in the show. Travis Lulay, not his best night. They didn't really have a lot of people contributing for BC. But Calgary was able to take this one in a really historical night, considering everything that's been going on in southern Alberta. Ethan, your thoughts?
And it must have been a very emotional game for the whole team in Calgary, the fans rallying around this team, and of course the Stampede coming up right away. And Drew Tate, welcome back to the Stampeders. He had a pretty solid night, first night in a while that he's been playing there.
And usually when we talk about the Edmonton Eskimos, we like to be excited, we like to be enthusiastic, but folks, there is nothing to be excited about after the shit show we saw in Week 1 from the Edmonton Eskimos. What an absolute joke, losing 39-18 to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. They were trailing by 22-1.
They were trailing 36-1 at one point.
36-1. And, you know, this can't be happening. This cannot be happening. If you look at the passing stats, Mike Riley was good in this game. It's not Mike Riley's fault. But the 3 interceptions really killed them. Also, the penalties. This can't be happening from the Edmonton Eskimos. And it's only going to get harder from here as they have to play BC twice and Montreal in their next 3 games. But there's always bright spots. Receiver Fred Stamps, 125 yards, more than double the Saskatchewan receiver, a leading receiver in that game. But I just want Ethan, you were at the game live at Commonwealth Stadium.
Right.
What was your thoughts on that football game?
Well, penalties and turnovers were a big factor. The interception by Mike Riley with no time left at the end of the first half really put a damper on the afternoon for the Eskimos. And Corey Sheets for Saskatchewan put together an incredible afternoon, 131 rushing yards. The leader for Edmonton being Mike Riley. So not a good night. The only guy I give props to is Fred Stamps. And one positive, hey, they were down 36-1. At least it wasn't that bad.
And thank you, Ethan, for that. We'll be back right away with the Asatwada All-Star of the Week. Welcome back to the All-Star Sports Show. Merrick DeCow.
Ethan Smythe.
Back with our last segment, one of our favorites behind question time. And that's All-Star of the Week. Ethan, your All-Star of the Week.
Mine comes from the MLB. It's about time somebody not from the NHL gets chosen for this, and it's Yasiel Puig of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Hitting .443 over the past week, .443 on the season with 8 home runs and 17 RBIs. Oh yeah, and he did it all in 1 month too. He's already got a hit tonight. I can't believe how well this guy's doing. He might just hit 400 for the season.
And that's crazy. A guy to come into that like that. And I got to give a shout out on the ex-Edmonton Capitals manager, Orv Franchuk. He was managing Yasiel Puig with AA in the Dodgers before he got called up. He was managing the Edmonton Capitals 2 years ago, so a quick shout out to Orv there. Orv was also the pitching coach for the Boston Red Sox in 1996. As the Red Sox came to a 4th place finish. Orv only lasted 1 year in Boston. Now to the CFL All-Star of the Week, John Cornish. This guy lighting a fire into the Stampeders, and I really appreciate his effort. 172 yards. It's really hard to get a lot of rushing yards in the CFL, as it is a passing league. Cornish was able to do it on only 24 carries, averaging 7.2 yards. That's almost a first down per carry. Cornish is just crazy. This guy is a human wrecking machine, and to do it on a night that meant so much to the city of Calgary and Southern Alberta, I give a shout out to you there, John. But that's it for the All-Star Sports Show. Merrick DeCash.
Ethan Smythe.
We'll be back with you next week here on the All-Star Sports Show. But we want to give a quick shout out to our producer, Josh Goodings.
That's right.
That's our producer. But until next time, you can check us out on Twitter
At All-Star Sports 88.
or fire us an email at allstarsportsshow@gmail.com. But for now, see you later. Until next week, see ya.
Does anybody